And you seen that happening as well? I guess we saw credit card debt recently go over $1 trillion. You could say there's sort of similar trends maybe with property prices going up. So maybe people are withdrawing equity from that. Are you seeing similar trends in comparisons to that period?
You're not really seeing that in the data. I mean, that's people. The refinancings are almost at like 30-year lows. I mean, they're down more than 30% year over year. And yeah, home prices are going back up, but it's not the sign of a vibrant real estate market. It's actually the sign of a very depressed housing market. Now, there's 15% of home sales that are new home sales. And that's what the valve has been for any growth in housing, because we have no supply. I mean, what are we talking about? 3 months of supply in the existing housing market. Nobody's listing their homes. So if you want to buy a home, you have to go to the builders, and that's why the home building stocks have been such a great place to be. But let's just say that when you're taking a look at this from a economic standpoint, holistic standpoint, new home sales, which might drive, the HGX or the home building index and the S&P 500, 85% of the sales in the real estate market nationally are in the existing market, in the resale market, which is completely moribund. There's no supply, there's no demand. The demand is down more than 20% over the past year. All the demand's been in the new market. You have a depressed resale market. And so you've got just two very inelastic curves. You got an inelastic supply curve, you got inelastic demand curve. And I guess what you would say is, well, the supply is tighter, then the demand is weaker, and that's the ingredients for the sort of real estate inflation we're seeing right now. This is not really demand driven. It's really because the supplies are so tight. But the flip side of that, when people talk about that 85% of homeowners locked into those low rate mortgages back in 2020, 2021, they become prisoners in their home. They can't refinance. They can't move, or else they'll have to refinance at rates, instead of being at 3 or 4%, or more like 7.5, 7.75%. And there's all sorts of talk, well, that people will, if they do that, they'll rent out their homes, so on and so forth. Okay, that much is true, but we've created more of a really sclerotic housing market. It's a very weird housing market. And I don't know if I would treat the rise in home prices as something that is going to have some sort of positive wealth effect on spending. And I'm not even so sure that you can talk about, well, look what the stock market's done this year. Okay, sure, we can talk about that. But do we talk about what the stock market's done this year without looking at it in the context of what happened last year? Do we look at the stock market? You see, when you're taking a look at wealth effects on spending from asset prices, you have to take a look at it over long periods of time. You can't take a look at it, oh, stock market did this, housing market did this in 3 or 4 months. No, it's actually when you do the wealth effect on spending, it's on two things, really. It comes down to Milton Friedman's permanent income hypothesis. How do people perceive these asset gains as being permanent? But also, it has to be really looked at on a trend basis. So you tell me, stock market, bull market or bear market? The stock market is flat. It's actually down fractionally over the past 2 years. Is that a bull market? I never seen a bull market where over a 24-month period, the S&P 500 is basically flat. All you've done is pick up the dividend and a whole lot of volatility. But because everybody lives in the here and now, and most people have short time horizons and can't look past the tip of their nose, they think we're in a bull market. They think we're in a bull market, Anthony, until I draw them the chart of the 2-year percent change in the S&P 500, which, by the way, I said is flat. It's actually fractionally negative. So you picked up the dividend and you picked up a ton of volatility and a lot of sleepless nights. So I don't know. I'm not in the camp that believes we're in a bull market in assets. And you could say, well, look at the Case-Shiller. We're up 3-4 months in a row. Yeah, but we're still actually fractionally negative on a year-over-year basis. Home prices aren't collapsing, but the trend is still fractionally negative. In the stock market, the trend, notwithstanding what happened this year, which is a recovery from the detonation last year, is flat over 2 years. So actually, in answer to your question, there is no positive wealth effect on spending. That's not happening. And the key is going to be what happens with the labor market and how does that impact incomes. And then on top of that, where's the savings rate going? You see, that is to me what the easy call is. The easy call, like 3.5% on the employment, 3.5% on the savings rate. We started the cycle at 9. We went to like 33 because of COVID, because we couldn't spend. We were locked in our homes, and now we're down to 3.5. So were we going down to 0? Like, we have no more impetus to spending, from a declining savings rate. And what if that savings rate, God forbid, mean reverts back to 9%? What if we do a round trip on the savings rate? And what people don't know is that this is just pure math. It's not even an opinion. That if we have the prevailing trend in real incomes, and the savings rate mean reverts in the next year, real consumer spending is going to be negative 1% between now, say, and the second half of 2024. So how do you escape a recession with that math? Now, if you have a view that the savings rate will just go down to 0, well, this is a case, I guess, where your assumptions will drive your conclusions. But you see, I am a disciple of Bob Farrell. And Bob Farrell's market rule number 1 is all about mean reversion. So we have a mean of 8 to 9% on the personal savings rate, which I would argue, I know people will roll their eyes. What's he talking about, personal savings rate? It is arguably the most important behavioral aggregate in the national accounts. So you mean revert that series, and we just trend out what incomes are doing, and probably income growth probably slows because we're seeing the labor market cool off. A consumer recession is inescapable. It's only going to be a question of how bad, not whether.